Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of Mythicast. I'm your host, Mike Greenbaum, at MGBaum89 on Twitter, and Mythicast is part of the Constructed Criticism Always Improving family. So we have big news today in the standard world of Magic the Gathering. Oko and his friends are gone, and we have a brand new format to talk about, but we'd be remiss if we didn't have a memorial service for Oko. We hardly knew him in standard. He'll be sticking around in more eternal formats, but as far as this podcast is concerned, Oko is no more. And I can't think of a better guest to do it with than someone who played Oko to, I would say, great success at the PT. I'm sure he's not quite as thrilled with the results by the end of it. But I'm here today with Dylan Lerch, and Dylan is a three-time Pro Tour competitor, once in 2005 in Columbus and twice this year. Dylan has an SCG top 8, and I think Dylan's biggest accomplishment, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is that he was in the featured drafting pod on day 2 of the Mythic Championship between Brad Nelson and Christian Houck, and he casually wheeled the Outlaws Merriman in Pack 3 to build what was a busted limited deck, and I'm sure the results don't do it justice. But Dylan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very, very well. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course, Dylan. Really happy to have you. And what I like to do when we start off the podcast is I like to talk a little bit about you and your journey in Magic the Gathering. I feel like a lot of people we see on Twitter, we see their content, their profile pictures, and their 75 cards, and we don't really get to see the person or hear about the person behind it. So, Dylan, when did you start playing Magic?
So I was at a friend's birthday party when I was in 3rd grade, which would have been it was either 94 or 95. I actually don't remember which, but everyone got booster packs revised because that was the cheap set on store shelves, and I had no idea what I was doing. Just open packs, and I don't even know if we played with them. It was just, here's packs, have at it. So, and I've been playing most of the time ever since.
Yeah, so you said most of the time. I know for myself, a lot of our guests, there's you play when you're in 3rd grade, and then the cards go in the closet for 15 years. But you've mostly been playing Magic since then? You didn't have a long lull in between?
Yeah, I took a couple-year break to play poker full-time back in like 2005, 2006, but otherwise, it's been mostly full-time ever since.
Were you a Chris Moneymaker kid? Were you one of those, you saw him and that was it?
Yeah, I got in. So I showed up to college, qualified for my first Pro Tour, and there was a Magic club, and there were a few of us all queued, and basically everyone in that group ended up doing poker, and you could make stupid money off of it back then. We basically all got suckered into that, but it was right around a couple years after Moneymaker.
Okay. And when you did poker full time, did Magic take the back seat, or were you able to play both?
Yeah, it was basically like I did a couple of PTQ seasons at first, and I wasn't in it, and eventually it was just all poker, and then around Zendikar-ish, Shards of Alara, those blocks, it started suckering me back in. I started reading articles and following people on Twitter, and I was just, I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, and you talk about 3rd grade, we talk about college. There's some space in between. When did Magic become more than a hobby for you? Or do you consider it still a hobby, nothing more in terms of the role it plays in your life right now?
It's definitely it's a recreation. It's the line between hobby and more gets kind of blurred until you're literally doing it for money. But it's I guess when I was in high school, I kind of felt this need to compete. It's kind of I really enjoy the competitive aspect of gaming, and so being able to play it at a high level and play against the best is kind of my goal with it. And so right around then is when it started shifting from, this is a casual thing to do with friends versus, I think I'm actually good enough to compete with it, and it's been mostly on that level ever since. Was
there a specific result you got? Like, was it the first time you qualified for the PT, or was it just over time, like, I'm pretty good at this. I'm winning my local tournaments. I'm putting up solid finishes. I think I want to do more.
I remember there was I basically grew up in game shops. Like I would go to the local technically a mall, I guess, but I would just sit in the card shop for like 4 hours at a time, just browsing cards. And then every time they'd have a tournament, I would play it. And then I was probably like maybe 11 or 12 years old. That card shop went out of business, and there was another one that opened up. So I'm like, sure, I'll check this out. Turns out it was owned by the same guys, run by the same guys. And they're like, oh yeah, it's that ringer from the other store. And I'm like a 12-year-old kid, and I just got a kick out of that. And so they treated me very well, and I kind of knew that that I've always been good with games. I've always been good with trivial stuff, and so it was just a really good outlet, and just it's been great.
Yeah. You talk about being that 12-year-old ringer. Were you like the young kid in a slew of like 18 to 24-year-olds, or was it?
Yeah. No, man, I remember this one time. It was a Stronghold pre-release. This was in the Wizards of the Coast gaming store in Seattle, like the actual the headquarters where the World Championships used to be. And it's this like big regional pre-release. So this was like back when they were, hundreds of people show up for this thing. And like I'm sitting there in like the XO bracket, just stomping this older like adult, and like he's just getting this pissed off, like he's losing to some kid. My deck was probably terrible too. Like I've never been good with limited, but I'm just crushing him with these like stupid 3/1 flyers, and then like I beat him and top 8 this random pre-release, and just crushing these adults, and I'm still like Stronghold was at 96, 98, like some in that kind of range. So I was 12 years old, 13 years old, and
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the cool things about Magic. I'm a middle school teacher. I run a Magic club at my school, and my 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, they play Modern and Legacy, and they could just crush me in some format.
Oh yeah,
It's great for them. Like it's a highlight for them being able to, because there's so many times as a 12-year-old where you just can't do anything with people that are 5 years older than you, 6 years older. But Magic kind of brings people together in that. And I think that's something you still see today in the local stores, even if sometimes the 12-year-olds, they're not winning the matches, at least they're getting introduced to it. But there's always that 12-year-old that goes Island Go, and you just know you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're screwed. You're drawing dead from the start.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this is a Magic the Gathering Arena Mythic level podcast. We talk about the grind to Mythic, and I know we talked a little bit about how you don't qualify for Mythic every month, but you are in fact qualified for the January MCQW. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'll be the first one I'm competing in. I've gotten to Mythic before, but I fell a little short in the top 1,000. And then the other months, it's so hard to balance paper play and arena play and playing on Moto to practice for Eternal events. And I just don't have the. I'm really bad with ladder play. Like I have strong loss aversion, so I'll sit here for like 4 hours saying like, I'm gonna grind arena tonight, and then I'll play like 3 matches, and I'll spend the rest of the time watching Twitch and just browsing the internet and refreshing Twitter 100 times, because I need that, like, all right, round starts, go. I need that motivation. But this time I'm actually qualified. I put in the work, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually, on Thursday, I was ranked 60 on the ladder, and I just don't want to play. I want to qualify for MCQW, and, I've had Kanye Best on here before, and we talked extensively about the ladder, and I'm sure you're aware about how, the ladder, he talks about how it could be tilting in the sense that if you go 500 at the top of the ladder, you're going to be dropping ranks really fast, and the system kind of encourages you, once you get to a top level, not to play. But in terms of grinding the ladder, did you start from bronze, or were you in platinum? It was a full bronze grind?
Oh yeah. It was. So I had gone Mythic down to plat, and then I got back up to diamond, and then diamond down, like basically all the way down. I didn't play for, it was probably like a month and a half. And so it was like, bronze game or go, and took about, it was like 50 matches or something, 60 matches. So like it doesn't take a lot of time. It's more just, if you're going to carve out 3 hours to play, you got to just click, play when you're done with a match, and just chain out a bunch of them.
Yeah, and there's that delicate balance between mentally taking 2 or 3 minutes to digest between matches, because in theory that should be better, but when it comes to grinding out matches, you kind of want to keep your momentum. So there is that delicate balance. So you hit Mythic. Did you hit it early in the month, later in the month? When did you?
Yeah, it was like the 15th or something,
So you hit Mythic, you probably come in, like the 500 or 600s around there, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was like mid 600s, mid 700s, in that kind of range.
And then what was your plan of attack? Was it wait till the last few days and grind it up? Was it play every day for a little bit and try to maintain in there? How'd you handle it?
So actually, I got my spreadsheets here. I think my goal is basically get to like top 600 and then just kind of chill. Because like I'd done the last day grind once, and it was just like, it was not fun. I was staying up, way too late, waking up in the morning, and just like playing without my full faculties. And it's not. When you're already on a relatively, you win 53% versus 58% of your games, that makes a huge difference. So it looks like I basically got to around 800 or so, just kind of dirtling around, fell into the percents, and then I was, kind of turned it on. it's like right on the 30th, and just spiked like 3 in a row, and just like, all right, I'm good. Called it quits.
Yeah, and it's so delicate. I think noon the day before. I was at 750, and I thought I was good. And then 2:30 the next day I check, and I'm like 1180. You play the one match,
crap.
You lose, of course.
Yeah.
Oko mirror, lose. You're on the draw. Turn 2 Oko both games. That's how it goes. And
The
you're not
usual.
qualified, exactly. And we'll have plenty to say about Oko soon. But yeah, the ladder is tricky. So I'm hoping that my spot could hold now. If not, play towards the end, but the decay in the high ranks is so minimal compared to once you get into that 200 to 500 just mess where everyone wants to camp. And I think it was Kanye Best actually who said, you want to camp one win after everyone else camps.
Exactly. Because everyone who's camping, there's the scrum underneath them, and it's just like once you get stuck in that, man, you basically you have to chain a couple wins together.
You just click back and forth, and you see your rank dropping every time you click. It's
Yeah,
not a great
fun.
feeling. So you wanted to hit Mythic, you wanted to queue for the MCQW. Do you have any plans to hit it this month, or are you basically now, I want to qualify for the MCQW, and then I'll put Arena on the back burner and play Moto and other things?
Well, so I'm going to be mostly focusing on Moto for there's a Modern GP in January that that's still plenty far away. But then there's Pioneer events here locally before there. But one of my goals is actually to hit Mythic on Limited. I've never gotten anywhere close to it, like mid platinum, I think. And I'm just not. I think that's one of the bigger holes in my game is limited play in general, and then specifically the drafting and the deck building. But it's something that I think that would be a big boon to my game to kind of work on.
Yeah. And speaking of Magic Online, we have a great sponsor on this podcast. It's MTG Traders, a fantastic place to get all of your Magic Gathering online cards. If you're listening to the audio version, Dylan gave a thumbs up. He is a customer of theirs for basically as long as Magic Online's been a thing, whether it's Legacy, Modern, Pioneer, Standard even. If you want to be getting your Magic Online cards, there's no better place. And their sister site, puremtgo.com, is a great place to check out articles on all the latest and greatest things happening in the world of Magic. So, Dylan, did you have any motivation to grind to number 1? Was that something you're like, I'll give it a shot, and if I lose a few, then I'll go for the camp? Is that anything that's crossed your mind before?
Yeah, I think so. So in a month where I'm unqualified, I just don't care. Like I would rather just lock in the invite slot. But like if I were to have a standard event to play toward right now, I'd be awesome. Like top 5, top 10, top 100 even. Like just something is it's kind of a fun token reward for being good at Magic and having the time for it. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, definitely get that Twitter picture, change the banner. Although your Twitter banner right now is pretty cool for those of you.
It's pretty awesome, isn't it?
It's the Twitch Magic stream of him beating Christian Hauck and the victory Dylan Lerch. So, I think most people would rather have that than the number 1, but either one would be pretty cool to have.
Yeah.
For sure. And let's get into your Mythic Championship experience, Dylan, because you had a pretty interesting weekend. So, if I'm correct, you just went down there, we're going to play the GP, and then played the last chance qualifier, hoping for the best?
Well, so my plan from the beginning, I played LCQs in Barcelona, and I had a blast. I played the GP, and it sucked, but like the whole weekend was great. And LCQs are just such a great chance. Like, to win a PTQ, you have to go like 6-1, 7-1, and then win 3 coin flips in a row. But to win an LCQ, I had to go 5-0. Like that's a a Moto trophy. Like that's so much more doable on any sort of basis. So I planned to fly out Wednesday night and game all day Thursday. If it works, awesome. If not, there's PTQs on Friday. There's a GP on Saturday, Sunday, like whatever. And the flights worked out great to where I could just do that and not have to worry about it. And was lucky enough to spike the second LCQ I played. So I, didn't have to pay GP entry, didn't have to pay more than 2 LCQs. I was able to wrap things up around like 8 p.m. that night and get a good night's sleep. And it basically was living the dream that day.
And you continued to live the dream on Friday as well. So do you want to tell our viewers how your Friday went at the MC?
Okay, so this actually starts with a funny story. I haven't told anyone this yet. So I went and got myself some breakfast, and I'm not very good at time management. So I'm sitting there, finished up breakfast, paid my tab, go to use the restroom, check Twitter like every millennial does, and I see people tweeting about how they're excited to start the Mythic Championship, and I start having this panic moment, like, holy shit, did I miss? I'm going to show up to the MC late. I thought I had like an hour and a half to go get some coffee, whatever. So then I finish up, run out the door, and I check the little badge that has the start times on it, and I misread the hall open as the players meeting. And so I think I've got 15 minutes to get to the venue. And so I'm literally, like, I jumped in my car. I'd made the drive the day before, so I knew how to get there. I get there with like 3 minutes to spare, and I'm literally running through the entire convention center to get there. Like, winded, I'm out of shape. I'm just literally running like an idiot. And I finally get there. The hall's empty. Like, there's no one in there. The judges are having their meeting. And so I left my wallet in my car. Like, I'm just like a madman. And so there's an hour to go for the MC, and I'm just like, running my ass off. But then I actually, we get started. I draft. Everything was fine. My pod was stacked, and then I win 5 Oko mirrors in a row to finish the day at 7-1, which was I've had all 3 of my MCs. I've had really good day 1 performances. So I'm pretty used to like getting off to a good start, but this was better than any of them so far. And it felt really, really good to end the day in pod 1, playing on camera for day 2. That was just a blast.
Yeah. So let's talk about after the the MC day 1. I assume you go back to your hotel and you can't help but start to fantasize about what could happen if you have a good day 2, right? Do those thoughts start to creep in your head?
Surprisingly little. Like that. Like I kind of get those thoughts, like, leading up to an event. But on day 2, day 1 into day 2, I had a lot of limited information to cram. Like I had done 1 draft in Eldraine prior to the MC draft, and it was against it was bronze arena bots. Like it was nothing like good practice. And so I had a bunch of podcasts to cram and articles to read, and just kind of tried to absorb as much information as possible. And that kept me kind of in the moment. And you can't really get ahead of yourself with things like that. Like there's so many, like you show up and you get your routine or whatever, but then, they call you to that feature draft pod, and like, there's just so much going around you. There's the 8 people at the table, 8 people behind each of us. There's cameras, there's crews, like there's, probably, 20 people on the stage right there. And there's just so much going on. You can't really get, oh yeah, I'm 7-1 now. Maybe what if I'm, 14-2, I'm good. Like you just don't have time for that.
Yeah. Do you think that all the commotion around the featured pod had any effect on you, or once you're sitting down, you're good to go, you're in the zone?
It definitely did a number on me, like going into the draft. I already, I'm literally reading these cards like it's a pre-release. Like I'm not an Eldraine drafter. Like this is not my comfort zone. Like so, even just the timed draft on day 1 was a bit stressful. But then doing it with showing the spotter, like I dropped 2 cards on the ground, and like the head judge had to like pick them up for me. Like this is not. I'm out of my element. But then like once that timer starts, like I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. I'm just dealing with the cards in front of me, making sure I read all of them. I definitely going back through the packs. I did not read all of them. And you only have 30 seconds to make a decision, or 10 seconds to make a decision. There's, my brain thankfully shuts out all that other garbage and just focuses on that.
Did you take a second to look to your left, look to your right, and kind of just like pinch yourself, like I'm sitting between Brad Nelson and Christian Houck? What's going on here?
A little bit. So the cool thing is, I don't know if this is the first time this has ever happened, but 3 of my day 1 pod competitors were in that featured pod for day 2, which is like that's really cool. Like I'm sure it's happened before, but it's got to be some amount of rare. So like I drafted with 2 of them already. I've played against MPL players. I've played against Platinum pros. Like I've played against Hall of Famers. Like I know I can compete with them, but like still seeing them next to me and like being there with these cameras panning and like knowing that people watching the broadcast, they see me and they're like whatever. And they see Brad or they see Christian or they see Ely, and like that those are names that they recognize. Those are the people that they're going to be paying attention to. So.
And you ended up having a pretty good draft deck on day 2. I remember Marshall, when he was talking about it, he's like, how did he do this? Like, what's going on? So you were in red and white, and then you open pack 3. And what happens? What do you see, and what decision process do you make?
So pack 3 itself, I think pack 3 pick 1 was a little bit. Let me pull it up here. Pack 3 pick 1 was a little bit weak. I took a Clockwork Servant, I think, but pack 2 or pick 2, it was Outlaw's Merriment and Shepherd of the Flock. And so my deck at that point, I had 4. I think I had 3 of the 4-drop knights, and I had the Archon, the 4-drop Archon, and my curve was. I was worried about it here, So like I see the Shepherd, and like I know the Merriment's a more powerful card. I'm in red white. I'm in white red. Like I know I'm going to be splashing red anyway. But I took the Shepherd of the Flock. Just I felt like it was a disciplined choice. In retrospect, it was probably just a bad choice, but it worked out really really well. I wheeled a couple of cards in that pack that just I know I was grinning like an idiot at the table. I wish the cameras were on me. Because the coverage team would have had a blast with that, seeing my reaction. But yeah, I wheeled the Merriment, I wheeled the red white, the Boros Hybrid Knight, I wheeled the Linden picks 12, 13, and 15 or something. Sorry, 10, 12, and 13. So my deck turned out very well.
Yeah, and I know you didn't get the result of the pod you ultimately wanted, and your day 2 didn't go as well as you wanted, but you played very well in the tournament. You put up a great result overall, and you did it with Public Enemy number 1. A slight twist on Public Enemy number 1, splashing white instead of black. But at the same time, we got to talk about Oko. I know Oko is banned. We're going to get into new standards soon, but I think it would be a disservice to everyone not to talk about Oko and just what went on to make this deck so strong and how you prepared for this tournament. Because even if we can't take the specifics of Oko with us as far as a lesson, we could definitely talk about how you prepare when you know you're probably going to be playing 5 or 6 or 7 mirrors in a tournament, and how that affects your deck selection, your preparation, and the slight tweaks to give yourself an edge. So let's talk about your choice first. Why did you go Bant as opposed to Simic or Sultai?
So the GP the prior weekend in Lyon, the Bant decks did really, really well. And the theory crafting behind it was that you have Teferi to allow you to play Mass Manipulation. So the thinking is, of all of the 6-mana Haymakers, Mass Manipulation is just the best in these mirrors. Because you're not just, casualties of war killing 3 things or 2 things. You're literally taking them for yourself and ending the game with it. The big problem with Mass Manipulation is obviously the casting cost. The blue is difficult, but also Veil of Summer just wrecks it. Like you're paying 6 or 8 mana for your thing, and they get to 2-for-1 you off of it, and you don't get anything off it. You're screwed. So you can't really. I didn't think you could play Mass Manipulation in a Cynic version or in a Sultai version, but Teferi allows you to kind of push through Veil. So you get Teferi. So once you set on using Mass Manipulation as your mirror breaker, and once you have Teferi as your way of enabling that, you also get a deck that's very well positioned, or at least better positioned against the blue-white deck, against the Teamer deck, against all these decks that are saying, all right, I'm not going to play Oko mirrors, but I want to beat the Oko decks. I think the Bant version going into the event, I thought it had the best chance of the 3. And I think mostly that played out. I like the Simic decks in retrospect. I think they probably would have been a better choice, but for the LCQ field in particular, and then for most of the PT, I felt very good with Bant.
Awesome. And for our YouTube watchers, you could see the list. For our audio listeners, I normally read the list, but this is a pretty stock Oko list. We have a Teferi, you have some Mass Manipulation, and the main deck Veil of Summer. But, you have your 4 Nissa Who Shakes the World. You have some Hydroid Craces, the Wolf, the Goose, the Druid. Basically what you'd expect for those of you listening in your car, at home, wherever you listen to your podcast. Now, of course, the question is, Oko has a huge target on its back. Did you at least try to beat Oko before, or you just knew Oko, you had to be playing it?
So before the field ban, I played a lot of everything, a lot of the Jeskai Fires lists, and then basically everything that I thought was good other than Oko, just the card Oko itself was just so hard to gain traction on. And I just didn't find anything that I liked. I played Simic, I played Sultai. I think I mostly played Sultai. And just the card, like I don't mind playing mirror matches. Like some people kind of shy away from mirror matches because they think, oh, you're gonna, they don't want to be outplayed by a better player. especially in a field where like I'm in a PT, I like my chances, but I'm certainly not the best player in the room. You know, I may not even be the best 100 players in the room. Like that is kind of daunting. But on some level, like once I kind of started to embrace the fact that I can play with these players, like I didn't have the fear of playing a mirror match against someone that is equal to or better than me, because you know if I know my deck and I know the lines, it's standard. It's not super complicated. Like standard is usually based on really fundamental interactions. It just seemed like it was the best thing going on, and it wasn't particularly close.
And did you do a lot of testing against the Sultai and Simic versions, or you kind of just this was more theory about the Bant?
It was mostly theory. So like I played a grand total of, it looks like 33 matches with the deck, with various Cynic decks or various Blue Green X decks, which is a relatively small sample size. You know, it's probably split, 15 on Cynic, 15 on Sultai, and 5 on Bant, something like that.
So, you've mentioned now spreadsheets and data. Does data play a big role in your preparation for tournaments and your growth as a Magic player?
I think a little bit. So with the caveat that we're always working in really small sample sizes. My education is it's a math background. So my bachelor's is in mathematics. I love statistics. It was big in my poker days. I like tracking information because I feel like I can contextualize the information very well and not draw too many conclusions that are unwarranted. But yeah, like I mean, I have literally every game of Magic I've played in the last 2 years online, logged, recorded, so I at least know what I played against, and the result, which is not super useful, but it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, so is it basically more fun, or is there something you've done with the data besides looking at it and just saying, oh, I'm 72 and whatever in my past X matches?
Yeah, it's mostly just for fun, just because the sample sizes don't work out. I know the last time I hit Mythic, I was struggling. So I was cheating decks a lot. Like I was playing 5 matches with the deck and then doing something new. And I played 100 matches that season or something, and I was only winning like barely more than a coin flip. It was like 55% or something. Like not high as I would expect to win in a standard environment. And I thought that maybe playing switching decks so often was messing with my win rate. So I tried to check and see if the number of games I'd played with a deck correlated with win rate at all. And there was just not enough information to draw anything from, which was a little disappointing, but also I knew that going in. So typically, you would need a couple hundred matches or, a couple thousand matches to draw like real sample sizes and real conclusions off of them. But we just don't get that.
Right. Crokies is the only person in the world who can draw accurate samples based on his play.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about as far as the PT goes is how day 2 didn't go well, and you're now 3 for 3 in converting to day 2, and then all 3 day 2s haven't gone well. What do you attribute that to? Is it just, again, super small sample size? Do you think it's just the cards don't go your way? Do you think at this point maybe there's a mental block? How do you handle that where you've had 3 good day 1s and now day 2 just hasn't fallen the way you want?
So I've been very cognizant of this for a while, because it's also happens to me in Grand Prix. It's happened to me in a couple of SCG events. It's happened to me in basically any 2 or 3 day stretch of playing Magic. I definitely don't do as well as the event wears on. Even if it's a weekend where I'm playing 2 or 3 PTQs or something, like the second or third event, like they just don't go as well. And I think a lot of it is mental exhaustion. I think that there are some holes in my game in that regard, in terms of diet, nutrition, just general being in shape, both mentally and physically, that I think would help with that. It's also I've recently gotten better with eating in the morning, but it's hard to find food at these events. It's hard to kind of take care of yourself if you're doing this for 24 or 48 hours. Like my PT day 2 was my 3rd day of Magic. I played 6 hours of LCQs, and then I played 9 hours of day 1, and then by the 4th round of day 2, like I was exhausted. Like I was playing like an asshole, and just like not like I could feel it happening. Like it just was not pleasant. And so I think that has something to do with it. It's also better competition as the event wears on. You're playing against better players. You're playing against better prepared players. So your win rate should drop a little bit. But I think it's kind of dangerous to start putting boxes around day one versus day two because there's nothing inherent to each day that's different, but the preparation around them, that was my, third day in a hotel room or whatnot. That definitely has changed. So there's something to think about.
Yeah, I guess, it's tricky because, you don't necessarily get the volume of tournaments that some people do. And then
Yep.
not only are they getting more Magic the Gathering matches in, but also all the things that come with that, like the preparation and how to just mentally deal with playing 16 matches of Magic over the course of 2 days nonstop.
It's a lot of Magic, like 16 matches, 2 drafts, and then you add in 6 matches the previous day. And it's like, I legit, I've been playing since 95. That's probably the most Magic I've played in a 3-day stretch in my life. Which is, that's a lot.
Yeah, and Magic is such a mentally intensive game to begin with. I play 2 or 3 matches on the ladder. I need to go take a walk.
Exactly.
So I can't imagine doing it. All right, so Oko treated you well in the tournament, but Oko won't be treating anyone well in Standard anymore. Oko is gone. And
Bye-bye.
Before we talk about what was banned, going into this morning, what were you thinking? Were you thinking Oko was going, or were you thinking they were going to try to fix Oko by banning everything else?
So I had a strong hunch they were going to ban Veil of Summer. We kind of got a preview of that in Pioneer. I think that card is on its way out in most formats. And I was pretty sure Once Upon a Time was going to be banned. Again, that card is it's so explicitly egregious in what it does that I just don't think it's from their new set. I think there is some aversion to banning new cards, but it's also, everyone knows it's not okay. I did kind of expect that Oko would not get banned. I'm not surprised to see it go, but I would have bet at even odds that it would not be banned. I don't know if that would have meant Goose or Nissa or something else, but they made the right choice. They banned if they're going to ban 3 cards, I think they banned the correct 3 cards. And at this point, I'm happy with them banning fewer rather than more. So makes sense.
Yeah. And now we have a brand new format.
Brand new, mostly,
right? I mean, we have some ideas of what's going to happen, but there are a lot of cards that you just couldn't play.
Yeah.
And now that they are not 3/3 Elks, they're back on the table. So,
exactly.
Let's say you were playing this Twitch Rivals thing tomorrow. Do you have any idea where you'd start with your testing?
Yeah, so there's 2 decks in particular that I think are at least operating on my own level 0. I don't know if this is if they should be or if this is more widespread. I know one of them, Jeskai Fires with the Cavaliers, it was a legitimately good deck. I think Greg Kowalski went like 7-3 with it at the MC. Almost top 8'd. Jeff Pike has been killing it for like actual forever with it.
And for those of you who want to hear about that, Jeff Pike was our guest last week talking about that deck. So if you want to check out anything about that deck, go check out our last episode. Sorry, Dylan.
No, it's a good, very, very timely, very timely. Like he's been killing it. Has multiple PTQ top 8s on Moto. It's a very good deck. I played it as part of my push for Mythic last month, and I could not beat good players playing Oko. The way to beat it was basically you put them to where they don't know they're dead on board and they just mess up and get too aggressive. But the deck is very, very good. I think the format could probably adjust to it better now than it could a week ago. But I think that is my front runner. Like I've got an event in 2 weeks, and that's the deck that, like, if I had to decide right now, I'd be playing Jeskai Fires. But then also, I think the green-black deck is probably still good. Once Upon a Time wasn't really a focal point of it, or at least it didn't have to be, especially if you're going into the 5 and 6 mana Planeswalkers. So the deck got weaker, but I think it's still a very good shell. Innkeeper's still good. All of the adventure cards are still good, and it's Rankle's still good. Like it's got a lot of really, really busted mythic rares. So something in there is.
Yeah, and I guess we're doing something right on the show because Kanye Best was on here talking about the green-black Adventures deck a few weeks ago. So if you want to hear about either of those decks, great place to start. Kanye, the version he played, he'd be remiss if I didn't say that he wasn't the one who created it. He will not want me to give him credit for creating it. He simply played it in the MCQW, but that one has the Lucky Clover. It is trying to do the busted Spin and Swordmaster things. But yeah, both of those seem great. So Oko is clearly a tier 0 deck. And when you hit tier 0, it's pretty much play it or be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think Jeskai Fires is going to be tier 0. I think it might solidly be tier 1. And when we get into that tier 1 discussion, if that is our level 1 starting point, the next question is, what is the deck best prepared to beat Jeskai Fires? Do you have anything off the top of your head that might be equipped to battle it?
So I played maybe 30-ish matches with the deck, and I remember that the card that was the most frustrating to play against was Doom Foretold. And so I wonder if that's part of it. Also, those decks can play a lot of permission. Thankfully, the Jeskai deck gets access to Legion Warboss post board, and that card is really, really difficult for control decks of any flavor to deal with, because they have to be respecting your turn 4 Haymakers and your fair Cavalier plan. But a Legion Warboss can get under that so easily. So I don't know, like if those, like for example, those are the only 2 decks in the format, I think you could probably craft some really, really compelling gameplay, and I don't know which would ultimately be favored. But that was one of the cards that was very frustrating to beat as the Fires deck.
That's totally fair. So there's always the talk. Anytime any format's new, mono red is something that comes on people's mind. Do you think mono red has what it takes to get there now that Oko isn't in the format and food won't necessarily be as big of a part?
I think so. So it's definitely something that should be tested, and I don't know if it means Cavalcade or something a little bit bigger. The cards are still very good. I don't think mono red was bad because the cards were bad. Like it's a little awkward that there's some parts of the deck the Shella doesn't really line up well, but like the food deck being the best deck, having like a Planeswalker that just creates an emblem of gain 3 life every turn is really, really difficult to deal with. But then there's other red aggro decks, like kind of adjacent. Both, I think Gruul could be okay. Something with Embercleave could be good. Something with the Knights cards could be good. Like I think there's a lot of space in the aggro shells that need to be explored for anyone with a competitive tournament in the short term.
Absolutely. I think the problem with Gruul might be Once Upon a Time really hurts their mana base. I am a big believer in Embercleave. I've been playing the red-white Knights version of the deck. I think Tournament Grounds is such an important card to be playing either for black-red. I think it lets those 2-color decks work. I don't know necessarily how successful you can be with a 2-color aggro deck that isn't playing the Tournament Grounds, just because 9 basics of each color is just not a 2019 mana base at this point.
No, it's horrible, and like at least Gruul gets Paradise Druid, so you can maybe go into more of a mid-rangey game, but then that plays worse with Embercleave. So like the deck might just not be there. It may not be a thing, but Embercleave, the card, is such an absurdly powerful thing to be doing that I think it's one of those. I don't know. It's too early to call it a format pillar, but it's one of those cards that I would be very surprised if it didn't have a significant role to play after Oko's gone.
And kind of adjacent to Embercleave, are any of the other big artifacts that were printed in Eldraine getting you excited? Anything you want to explore, whether it's Great Henge, whether it's Circle of Loyalty, any of those have what you think it takes to get there?
I think the Great Henge is the one that I'm most interested in. It's so good with Lovestruck Beast and a couple of the other, you can make some really good green-black and green-X shells that use the Great Henge and just creatures. Like that's ready-made combo. I don't really, the Cauldron or the Mirror and the Circle of Loyalty, none of those really. I don't think they're doing things that you really want to be doing, even with the ability to have a text box. I think there's just cheaper and better and more efficient, more streamlined things you can be doing with your turns. But the Great Henge, it adds mana, it adds life, it makes your creatures bigger. It's a really, really difficult mid-range engines to get past, and all it takes is having creatures in your deck. So that's the one that I think is worth exploring.
Yeah, and I'm sure people will. So you said you have a tournament in a couple weeks?
Yeah, it's just a WPNQ.
Okay.
Just here in Texas somewhere.
Nice.
We don't know where.
Yeah, and I'm thinking tomorrow's Twitch Rivals will really give us a nice picture of what the meta is going to look like, because I'm hoping someone breaks it. I hope we just see something out of left field.
I think if someone does break it, there's of the kind of established decks that are going to be reinvigorated. The Cat Oven combo is still something that I think is really, really good. And if you can get the mana to work, if you can find the right shell, because black-red, the mana doesn't work. I think if you put Goose in there and do green-red or green black red or something like that, you could maybe get it to work. I don't know if Corvold's actually good or if it's just kind of a trap. But the Cat and the Oven together are so there are decks that just literally cannot beat that combo. Like it's kind of silly that it's 2 1-mana cards and you're brick walling green creatures. You're gaining life against red decks. Like, you're doing a lot of things and you're building up inevitability in ways that are very difficult to fight. So I'd be curious to see what the best version of that is. But then Nissa's still a hell of a card too. So like, there's a lot of really interesting cards to build around right now.
Yeah. And I guess we'll find out tomorrow what those
Yep.
interesting builds look like. So Dylan, I think that's all we have today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Really, really cool.
So Dylan, if our listeners want to find out more about you, where can they find you? Whether you stream, are you on Twitter? Where do we hear what Dylan's thinking?
So I'm probably most active on Twitter, both for mostly Magic the Gathering, some fantasy football, and some social issues, all the good stuff. It's DT Lerch, DTLERCH. That's also my Twitch handle. I stream very infrequently, but I've been meaning to do more of it for a very long time now. And I'm at basically every Magic event in Texas and a lot of them around the country. You can find me in person. I'm very shy and introverted in person, but I'm happy to talk to anyone if they come out and reach out to me. It's kind of it's all a goal of mine to be more social with people. So anytime you see me, say hi.
All right, Dylan. Well, thank you again. And for those of you listening, as a reminder, no matter where you're listening or watching, we could always be found on YouTube and any podcast platform where you normally get your podcasts. We are part of the Constructed Criticism, always improving family of podcasts. And if you want to be a guest on the next Mythicast, just send us a tweet at Arena Mythicast with a picture of your deck list, your Mythic ranking, and we'll reach out and try to make something happen. Dylan, thank you so much again. All of our listeners, we'll see you next week.